94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
I'm your host, Sergeant First Class Retired Don Sorensen, and on today's Soldier Salute, we're speaking with U.S. Army infantry veteran Robert Fitzgerald. Robert, tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised outside the city of Chicago in a little suburb called Barrington, Illinois. And from then, right out of high school, I decided to join the Army. A lot of family in the military, and so I went immediately into the infantry. And as that progressed, got my first choice of duty station, ironically, up in Fort Drum, New York, one of the coldest places on earth, and deployed with the 10th Mountain Division 214 Infantry. From then, we spent about 15 months in country and came back after that. Wasn't able to deploy again. I got injured overseas and got TRADOC orders to go down to Fort Benning, Georgia. And from there was drilled down there. Immediately after getting out of the military, moved to Virginia, met my now current wife, and now she's actually serving in the Navy as an officer, and we're currently stationed down in Charleston, South Carolina.
Robert, the military as a family tradition seems to be a strong common thread in a lot of the soldiers that I talk to here on the Soldier Salute. Your family's no different, is it?
No, not necessarily. I think one of the biggest parts to that is I grew up in this town that I mentioned, Barrington, which if anybody knows the area, they'll know it's a very affluent area. And you don't find many people that go into the service just because they all go off to college, they all do their thing. Me, unfortunately, I didn't really have that option. And when I looked at my family, my grandfather, my granduncle especially, they were both in the Army. One was in the Korean War and one was in World War II, and it was pretty wild. They both did the infantry, and it was just a no-brainer. I knew exactly what I wanted to do because what they did. And when I got down to Fort Benning, I remember getting letters from my mom. She would write me all the time, and we would write back and forth, and she said, you know, your great uncle, he's going to try to make it. He was kind of nearing the end of his life. He wrote me a letter saying that the last thing he wanted to do before he would die was make it to the parade field, the same parade field that he marched across back when he was a young soldier. And to me, that was one of the biggest drives when I was there to go ahead and complete it. That motivation you need to get out to the sand pit, the motivation you need to finish that next run or that next march. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but he gave my mother his dog tags before he passed to give to me on the parade field as kind of a remembrance. And so to me, that's where that motivation came from. And that's where we found a lot of that, or I found a lot of that inspiration to just keep going no matter what it was, because I know people with much bigger shoes than me had been through it before, and if they can do it, I can do it.
Robert, 10th Mountain, man, you talk about a prestigious unit. A lot of our listeners are probably familiar with it from Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was actually one of the movies that I remember us watching when we were at 30th AG waiting to go to basic training. That was like on the background, always playing. You know, that was what everybody looked at when the war was kicking off. It was like Black Hawk Down. That was the movie that everybody went to. That was the first kind of desert combat, brought the spotlight to everything. And so ironically, I get up to 10th Mountain Division 214 Infantry, and we had a first sergeant who was he was too good in garrison, I guess you could say, and was a little bit too gung-ho. And unfortunately, fortunately for us, some would say, he got relieved of his command, and the only person to fill the spot right before we deployed was over in headquarters was First Sergeant Eversman. And if you've ever seen the movie, you know Sergeant Eversman is kind of the main character on that. He's the pretty boy. He's the man that saved the day. Well, that gave us a lot of clout. Immediately stepping into country, he was always about looking after the guys. He was always about taking care of him and not worrying about the brass above him. He always wanted to take care of the men below him. And for that, we were able to get the best missions. We were able to do, you know, the things that we wanted to do without being interrupted, and it made us feel safe and good. And so to me, having that kind of leadership right above us it's insane. I mean, anybody knows Black Hawk Down, and now I get to say, well, you know, that guy, he was the one that actually led us in combat. So I think we're pretty fortunate, and our unit was fortunate because of it, and all it did was made us all better soldiers in the long run.
Robert, while you were overseas, you sustained a chest injury. Man, how do you come back from that?
I think the biggest thing is just wrapping your head around it, first off. So what happened was essentially the wrong place, the wrong time, as they kind of call it to joke about it, your enemy marksmanship badge. You know what I mean? It's nothing to brag about. And my first sergeant, when we were over there, he actually, when we were giving out awards for Purple Heart, he looked at me and said, well, I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to say. You don't say congratulations. You don't really say, you know, attaboy. Like, what do you say when you get shot in the chest and go back out? That you just kind of hand them the medal and walk on. And that was kind of the thing, is you don't really know. You don't say congratulations because it wasn't anything you did. You happened to be there when it happened. You're on the receiving end, and I'll always remember just thinking what it would have been like to be on the other side of that rifle and imagining that bullet from that side. And I constantly had dreams, and it would always put me in that place. And I would always wake up night after night, always having those issues when I got home. But then eventually, you just started to take that, and instead of having that be a crutch to hold your life back and always look in the rearview rearview mirror. You kind of look at that as any other experience that you do in your life that makes you stronger. You go, cool, I overcame that. Just like if you're going to do a marathon run, just like if you're going to do, really anything, you have to look at that as a tool that makes you stronger. And so fortunately, I was able to find somebody that convinced me of that theory and of that reality. And since that day, I've looked at it as almost a positive thing to build the man that I am today, instead of that holding me back and me wanting to get another round at the bar for free from somebody because I was injured in combat. That's not the way to look at it. We are the people in our community that people lean on because of our diligence, our heroism, our warrior abilities. And that's something that was taught to me and I want to teach to other people.
Robert, you've got such a positive outlook on life and such a great way of looking at how a soldier can overcome obstacles and adversity. Those are the very things that a lot of soldiers are having trouble coping with today. Where do you acquire those skills?
Well, I think originally I have to give credit to Dr. Locker. He was a gentleman at the VA who, after seeing probably 4 or 5 different therapists, I was finally put in the care of him. And to tell you the truth, at first I thought it was rough. At first I thought it was crass because he told me the one simple thing. I would go into his office and I told him a litany of things, breaking into tears and talking about what I'd seen, what I'd done, what I'd been through, all the things that normally a counselor would just tell you, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. And they would tell you what you want to hear. And this guy finally said to me, I would have trouble coping with the fact that that wasn't me. That's not how my mom raised me. That's not how my dad raised me. That's not who I was as a person to do those things or see those things. And he said, it is you, and you need to accept that and take that and build yourself on it and move forward, and not look in the rearview mirror and look at that as a crutch or a limp or a vulnerability in yourself. And to me, that's what got me through it, that mentality. And so when my buddies and I found Boulder Crest Retreat up in Northern Virginia, this theory of post-traumatic growth came into the introduction. And that is essentially the theory of what doesn't bring you down and what doesn't hinder you only makes you stronger. The things that you face in adversity can only build to make you a stronger warrior and a stronger part of your community. We found that, and we wanted to start that here in South Carolina. So what we did was we teamed up with a number of sponsors, a number of other people, and decided that we want to eventually bring a retreat like that directly to South Carolina with the theory of post-traumatic growth and the Warrior Path program, the one that is working with 88% yield results in Northern Virginia for these guys that go through it. I mean, it is amazing to see these people come out of it and not have a crutch like, something they get to lean on like a therapy dog, a stress ball to squeeze, actually doing it with self-preservation and sustainability. It's a truly remarkable program. It is our goal to bring it here because we want everybody to look at life as positive as we do, and we want to help those people become part of the 2.2% that actually overcome PTSD, and we want to make sure that PTSD doesn't take lives anymore, it only borrows them.
Robert, you grow up in Chicago, you get sent to Fort Drum, not too far from home. You end up with the 10th Mountain, go overseas and get injured, and then they send you to Fort Benning, Georgia? What's that about, man?
Yeah, it's kind of a culture shock, actually. It was, going from that high tempo, high stress kind of atmosphere to now go to a TRADOC unit because I couldn't really deploy anymore. It was interesting, but to tell you the truth, it made me realize, one really important thing. I mean, I had a decision to make at that time. When I was in Fort Benning, it was either, okay, do you want to stay in and do you want to make this your career, or do you want to get out and try to start a family and try to, work for yourself or do whatever it is that you want to do, your dreams and ambitions that you never really got to try because you joined at 18 years old. And I made whichever decision you make is fine, but I made the decision that, okay, a TRADOC unit, it's great. I'm just doing drill in some of the ranges and I can leave this and know that it's a good transition into civilian world because I wasn't coming directly from combat. I wasn't coming from, that line infantry unit. I was able to then slowly get out of the military and look at how I wanted to integrate my military experience into civilian life. And so Fort Benning was a great place. A lot of history there, a lot of amazing units passed through there. Everything from start to, from the start of you being a young infantryman, a young little green guy, you get that through Fort Benning and training there. So to actually be on the other side of that was really interesting to see how they mold soldiers and make them who they are. And you're not the one in the sandpit anymore. You're the one that's actually telling them to go to the sandpit or seeing how they actually do those things behind closed doors. It's a total head game. And so it was really cool to see and then kind of leave that and have that as a good send-off when I got out of the Army. Was pretty enlightening.
Robert, you go from a high-speed, prestigious unit, U.S. Army infantry soldier to a military dependent.
Yeah, actually, it was quite a transition. I think it's funny. I met my wife in Virginia Beach, largest Navy community in the world, largest naval base in the world. She's been a mechanical engineer for her entire career and never thought about the military. And when I met her there, everybody around us, all of our friends around that community, she just kind of got that patriotic bug, if you will. And she took that to the next step. And now, so I've got that little dependent card, that pink dependent card or whatever, that lets me get on around bases and shop at the commissary and do all those fun little things. It's definitely interesting, and we have a lot of fun with it. And we always obviously make jokes and everything, and I'll never salute her and all that, rah, rah, rah. But it's cool because I still get a little bit of that taste of the military atmosphere and that aspect. We live close to base. We do things like that, and I get to help her with her uniform. And it's cool because it's a great little kind of kickback to the memories that I wish I could still be a part of, or the things that I miss about the military. I get that little taste. And my wife couldn't be happier. She's an amazing officer. She's a CB in California, and then now she's a CEC officer down in Charleston, and loves the Navy, wants to make it a career, and she's doing great at it.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pigs Barbecue. Serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. By Lexington Guns and Shooting Range. Veteran owned and operated. By Love Air Plumbing and Electrical. Love to help you love your home. And Dominion Energy. We depend on our servicemen and women, and they can depend on us.